All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, on the line with Billy Gomilla. You can join him and on the SB Nation platform for LSU and the Valley Shook as the Tigers get back into play this week after a bit of a week off, a scrimmage of sorts after the big demolition of Miami in week one. So it's Auburn, LSU, always a pivotal matchup in the SEC Western Division, and especially, Billy, with both teams coming off enormous week one wins out of conference in which they kind of fortified, especially LSU, what we might expect for the rest of this season.
Yeah, no, it was a huge week one win for LSU over Miami. I kind of felt a little bit of confidence going into that game, mainly because I thought Miami was a little overrated, and I thought it was a good matchup for LSU just based on kind of how their strengths and weaknesses lined up. But LSU played great, really kind of just pulled away in that first half, and that second half was kind of hard to even gauge because it was just essentially garbage time. Miami was just winging it around trying to catch up, and LSU just kind of went into a shell to try and make sure they held on to the lead. And right now, there's still a lot of unknowns about LSU as a result because it was kind of more the same last week against Southeastern. LSU didn't really pull away, but it was never really in doubt either at the same time. Defense pitches another shutout. So right now, we still have a lot of questions about this LSU team going into this big week 3 matchup in Auburn.
Yeah, so what we saw out of Joe Burrow doesn't look impressive on the stat sheet, but it was impressive to watch, just concerning him just not making mistakes, basically, and hitting guys when they were open. And, you're playing good enough, considering his first start and live bullets and what was supposed to be a near elite defense. And what would be your assessment of seeing him in week one, especially it being Miami, but also week 2?
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment in terms of what you see from him is much more kind of the intangible, the leadership, he has an ease and a confidence about him that I think is really good. Very similar to Danny Etling. I do think he's got better potential. In terms of his escapability is really good. He can really move with his feet. He's got good footwork. He always looks calm. He never looks rushed. He's had a lot of throwaways, and he's had a good amount of drops, more than what I would have expected from this receiving core, which I think as a unit, this offense is still kind of finding its way a little bit, figuring out exactly what they do well and what they don't do well. And that may not bode well against a really good Auburn defense this week, but I'm confident that things will continue to develop down the road. We'll just see how that plays out with this schedule.
Yeah, going into that Miami game, I certainly wasn't surprised that LSU won the game. Was a bit surprised at just the level of dominance, and I thought Miami had more known commodities versus LSU, which quarterback, running back, receivers, except for the kid that comes in, Jonathan Giles from Texas Tech, that we didn't know a whole lot about.
Mm-hmm.
So your thoughts? Let's see what Brissett did this past week, 19 for 137. So he's kind of separated himself after the big week 1 performance against Miami as well as the number 1 guy.
Yeah, and if you'd have asked me before the season whether he'd be the number 1 back, probably wouldn't have picked him. I probably would have gone with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's a little it's kind of the new toy effect. He's the more recent big-time recruit, but it's been easy for everybody to forget that Brissett was a big-time recruit. He is, in fact, the all-time leading rusher in Louisiana high school football history. So he had a heck of a high school career. He just happened to be in the same class with Darius Geis, so he was kind of the other guy. And then both of them were 1 year behind Leonard Fournette. So it's been easy for them both to get lost in the shuffle. He's had some injury problems. Last year, he kind of got in the doghouse with that big fumble against Troy. And again, with LSU having two very good first and second backs in Geis and then Darrell Williams, there just wasn't a lot of carries to go around for Brissett. But this year, he's a senior. I do believe that can matter for running backs because being a little older, being a little smarter, more developed physically, more time in the weight room, that ability to just you're playing against guys that are younger than you, that haven't seen as much as you. I do think that there's an asset to that. On top of that, I think he's a better fit for the more purely zone-based scheme that LSU's running. He's more of a one-cut guy. He sees the holes well, I think, in that type of defense, that type of offense. And I think it's just been a good fit for him. I think he's more the back. It's kind of like those Denver running backs, running this kind of offense where you had guys that could be successful. And there was a cut of different talent with the Clinton Portises and the Terrell Davises, et cetera. But you had a lot of guys who were successful that in that offense went other places and weren't quite as good because they had attributes that fit that scheme specifically. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here with Brissett.
Talking LSU football with Billy Gomilla. You can join him on the SB Nation platform there for LSU Athletics and the Valley Shook, ATVS. The offensive line obviously lost Ingram in game 1 at left guard. They were number of suspensions on offense and defense going into week 1. Those guys are coming back. The offensive line is going to be a point of emphasis against what we expected to be a great offensive defensive front for Auburn, and then they really showed up against Washington. So that seems to be a big part of this game.
Yeah, it's still an offensive line that's kind of trying to find itself. Losing Ed Ingram cost them a really steady interior guy. So far, one of the question marks has been answered really well. It's center Lloyd Cushenberry, who's been probably LSU's best lineman to date in terms of consistency. Sadiq Charles at left tackle had a great day against Miami. Didn't play last week. I believe it was some kind of minor injury or might have been a discipline issue. We don't really know, but he is expected back this week. We may have found one extra guy in sophomore Austin Deculus, who was a reserve in week 1, started in place of Charles in week 2 at left tackle. Probably going to wind up starting at right tackle this week and did really, really well against Southeastern, which is important. And really, more importantly, he was on par with his assignments, which is something that the JUCO transfers and some of the newcomers have struggled with a little bit. The disappointment to date has been senior Garrett Brumfield, who has just really been iffy. He when he does well, he does really well. He's blocked for some of the biggest runs of the year and done well, but he struggled kind of down in, down out against quicker linemen. And so he's going to have to really kind of up his game this week against Auburn, especially with those 2 defensive tackles they've got.
Talking LSU and Auburn, we've got Billy Gomilla on the line from SB Nation. It's and the Valley Shook. 2 other things. I know you don't have a whole lot of time, Billy. I want to hit you up with. We heard so much about the secondary in regards to lack of depth coming into week 1, despite Greedy Williams being one of the very best around. And, of course, Christian Fulton was able to get back into the lineup, and he's cleared to play and ready to go. But stepping on the field for the first time in a long time in that week 1. Is this something that LSU is just going to have to live with the entire season and just hope people don't get hurt back there?
Well, getting Fulton back was a big boost for it because we were kind of not counting on having him really, to be honest. But getting him back is a big help. It kind of solidifies another starting corner spot opposite of Greedy Williams. It does mean that the graduate transfer from Stanford, Terrence Alexander, is able to be more purely a reserve, which he's done very well to date. They're going to also get the depth to improve a little bit this week, get some guys back. Todd Harris was in concussion protocol last week. He'll play this week. They're getting some more contributions from some of the back of the depth chart guys than what we expected going in. Jacoby Stevens, who was a big-time recruit, but to date hasn't really found his role, seems to be getting in a lot, rotating in with Grant Delpit, who's also taken a big step up at safety.
Lastly, Billy, of course, the pulse of the fan base going into the season, you always have your 5 or 10% on each end of the spectrum. The sky's falling versus we're the greatest thing. We're going to win a national championship. But after the Miami win, I got to think that the bulk of the center feels much different about this season and the potential of what this team could do.
Well, I think the more realistic fans still understand that there's a ways to go for this to be back to being a championship level team. But winning the Miami game means the first of your iffy games that could make this a 4 or 5 loss season are already on the plus side. So I think if you hold serve with the games that you can win, the games that are winnable, you're still looking at a pretty good year. Not championship level, but you're going to have a lot of guys coming back towards next year. And I think 2019 has a chance to really be a special year if you can make some progress this year. This week's going to be big for that. Auburn, I don't know that anybody really expects LSU to go in there and win. LSU's only done that a few times in the last couple of decades. But if they can play a good game, have a good shot at winning. If they do win, then you're 3-0, and you're going to have a really good shot to be 5-0 when Georgia comes to town in a couple of weeks.
And of course, it's the site of the many great LSU-Auburn games, but most recently the infamous last-second play that ushered out Les Miles.
Yeah, this is a long series with a weird storied history going all the way back to, the building outside of the stadium catching fire in 1996. 1998 LSU wins with Terry Bowden getting run out the door. Honestly, of LSU's 3 wins there since in the last 20 years, all 3 have come over coaches who were later fired. It was Terry Bowden in 98, 2008, Tommy Tuberville's swan song, and then in 2012, Gene Chiswick's last year.
So they alternated in the SEC back and forth. So we're talking about 10 games in 20 years, and LSU's only won 3, 3-7.
Yeah, 3-7. Lost in 2000, 2002, 2004, 2006. Won in 2008. Lost in 2010, and they've generally, with a few exceptions, been really good, tight, competitive games. But there have been a few stinker ones in there. I mean, there was, of course, Cam Newton's Heisman moment in 2010, where he basically beat LSU single-handedly.
Regardless of who you root for, this is always on the radar for everyone. It's always a great matchup in the SEC Western Division, 2 of the top programs in the country, LSU-Auburn. Appreciate Billy Gomilla jumping on board here to break up to break down the situation with LSU football. Billy, we will let you go. Want everyone to join him on SB Nation there and the Valley Shook.
Thanks, man. Anytime.
Right, sir. Billy, you take care.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I'm going to hang on the line for just a few more minutes in case you've got any calls. 860-325-3687. That is the number. Again, that's 860-325-3687. If anybody wants to let me know what's on their mind concerning college football. Or shoot, we'll open it up. Concerning anything. Almost anything. No, we want to talk college football, but who knows? Hit me with anything. I will hang out for just a couple minutes. If nobody wants to call, then I'm done for the night, and we will see you back here Tuesday night at 9:45 Eastern Time. We've got Jordan K. from SB Nation, House of Sparky, to talk up Arizona State's huge, enormous win that nobody in the offseason necessarily saw coming. Arizona State upsetting Michigan State. Now, after Sparty struggled with Utah State, many of us, including myself, saw a tight game, and I picked Arizona State with the points. Still thought Michigan State would pull it out late. So we've got Arizona State talk at 9:45 Eastern Time Tuesday. Then we follow that up with Stephen Smith of Touchdown Alabama and Bama's first SEC test, taking on Jordan Ta'amu and company with the Ole Miss Rebels. And then we've got a huge lineup. I think you guys saw it for the entirety of the week. As we've got a call coming in. This will take me just a second to grab the line.
The call will start at the beep.
All right, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Bryant, man. Hey, I'm just calling to check in with you, my man, on what you found out regarding Mr. Jeff George from the University of Pitt.
Yeah, I haven't found anything out.
Oh, my bad.
No, it's not your bad. I told you I'd look into it, but yeah, the schedule's a little bit tight for that in particular. But certainly, I can hit some people up and find something out. So you've searched on Google, I'm guessing. You can't find any information or stories on this?
Well, here's the thing.
Yep.
Real quick, what I did is I knew that he had transferred as a graduate. I guess he graduated from University of Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And then he transferred to Michigan. Well, then something happened when he was in Michigan because he was there for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
And then I heard he was going. Well, then I heard he was going to Pitt, and I was like, oh, all right, some good prospects, good times. Never heard another thing about him.
So I'm curious, is the interest there with Jeff George?
Well, I mean, they need a quarterback. They need a quarterback. They need one, and that's why I was just checking in. So.
Yeah, so you're talking about Pitt. Who are you talking about needs a quarterback?
Pitt.
Did the Kenny Pickett get hurt?
They need a quarterback.
Yeah, I didn't see the for as much as I wanted to watch Penn State. There was just other things going on with Texas A&M, Clemson, USC, Stanford.
There was nothing to see.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
That was a scrimmage game for Penn State. That's all that was.
I DVR'd the game and meant to go back, but you know how that works. Trying to watch 25 games on Saturday, but
watching the second quarter.
Oh, so Kenny Pickett's not impressing you, because I liked what I saw. Not that he had a high ceiling, but he managed the game against Virginia Tech and against Miami pretty well.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
But like I said, man, I appreciate you taking the call. Love the podcast. Love the live YouTube.
Thank you.
You're the man. And hey, run another thing, and then I'm gonna let you
Sure.
go. I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
Why didn't Kentucky make the top 25? What is going on?
They made my top 25.
They made my top 25 too. I'm like, I mean, I have love for those guys. I mean, I'm not a fan, but I respect them. And that's bullpucky, buddy.
Well, you know what the deal is, and I saw your comment on there, and I hope everybody realizes that with all the comments, I can't get to all of them, so I try to scan them and then pick and choose and that sort of thing, and get to as many as possible. But you know what the deal is, starting with a preseason top 25, is different people have different approaches to it, and this may be one of the reasons why, Bryant, I don't have a preseason top 25. Maybe I should do that because it typically gets a lot of views. But the top 25 is based on some level of projection. You still with me, Bryant? I think I lost him. So anyway, I'll address this. So the top 25. So I got a lot of grief, as I typically do, and I know it's coming my way over my latest top 25. If you look at the comments section, a number of people blasted me for my top 25. Georgia's number 5. How can you rate 4 teams ahead of Georgia? Blah, blah, blah. And they don't listen. Please listen to my explanation. This doesn't mean that I think, for example, Ohio State's the 15th best team in the country. Hang on just a second. Here we go.
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, voice of college football. Who's on the line?
It's George, Mark.
Oh, we got George on the line. What's going on?
I don't know what happened. My neighbor has lived here for like 12 years,
Okay.
and starting a few days ago.
Okay.
He plays loud music all day. I think I'm in a biker bar.
What kind of music are we talking about?
Metallica, biker bar
Metallica.
music. And I think it's good because I'm a Gator. That's what I need to hear right now. But other than that, I'm glad we lost. Otherwise, I'd be like, go play some happy music, you know?
So it's confirmed your mood. This is how you're feeling.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
You got
we can move on now.
Got the one loss out of the way.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you know what?
Yep.
I think behind the scenes that because we kept fighting people in parking lots with rocks and baseball bats, I think there may be some behind the scenes shit here. And I just don't care. On the other hand, thank God I'm just a big fan of Southeastern Conference football. I'm still high on LSU and Auburn, and start naming teams. Alabama, do you know Tua has like 10-inch hands? Normal people have 7-inch hands. He's a freak of nature. He has short legs. You can't bring him down. Oh, my God. Nick Saban's at home partying right now.
Does Nick Saban party?
He is partying, I promise. Yes, the doors are locked.
In his own way. In his own way.
He has people paid to protect him from himself.
Well, based on the party atmosphere there with the Metallica and all that going on, I just want to make sure you're okay. Everything's good. You're safe. You're sound. Everything's fine. Okay.
I run this place. I'm the shot caller in my neighborhood.
Okay. All right. I can imagine that.
Yeah. I'm mild-mannered and all that, but everybody knows. I've been in prison twice, Mark, and I ran both of them. It was so funny. I was the only guy with 2 mattresses on my bed, and I'm only 5'7". Makes me laugh.
This doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me, George.
People love me because I'm funny, and I'm talking about serious shit, but I'm joking. You know, they're like, "Say that again." They want to write it down. You know, it's good. I'm a saint by nature.
Once I was able to talk to you. Once I was able to talk to you over the phone, it didn't surprise me because it comes through even on the comments.
Hey, man, I re-listen to some of these shows, and I just laugh and laugh and laugh. I love it. Because, most people keep stuttering. It's frustrating.
Right, George?
All right. I love your guest, and tell everybody, please don't be rude in the chat section. Come on. Every once in a while there's a caller and people go, hey, you stuttered too much or something rude. That's like the person you're talking to. Don't do that. We're just friends here talking.
Yeah, we're just people.
Football.
We're all people. We all say stupid things. We all have our little flaws and weaknesses. It's not a big deal. Good word for the day, George.
At one time, I thought the Gators were going to play Clemson in the title game, and I've had to humiliate myself a little bit openly on the open air and say I was wrong.
You're not backing off that prediction now, are you?
Well, if we do it, it'll be at 14-1.
Okay. Yes, it will be.
All right.
All right, George. You have a good one. Appreciate the call.
Bye, Mark.
There's my man, George, jumping on the call-in show here. And I wanted to address something that Bryant brought up. So he wanted some information on Jeff George and what we were talking about. We were talking about the top 25 poll. All right. I should produce a preseason top 25 because people love to see that kind of stuff. And I actually like to kick it around as well, but I haven't done that in the past because you can take an approach in a different number of ways. One would be some people look at the schedule. So they'll throw out a top 25 and say, this is my preseason top 25. And then you'll ask them, okay, why do you have this team this high or this team this low? And they'll start talking about the schedule. And I think, well, you're not telling us who you believe are the top 25 teams in the nation. You're telling us, I think these teams are pretty good, but then I look at the schedule and I move them around. So you're making a projection on what you think the end is going to look like. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not making a projection. I'm looking at right now two games played by everyone. And I'm saying, okay, who won the games and who did they play? Did they play good teams or not so good teams? And then what was the performance? Did they win these games 50-0? Or did they barely win these games? Like Washington, if Washington would have lost to Auburn 52-10, they would not be in my top 25 right now. But they stood toe-to-toe with what we believe is a top 10 to 15 team in Atlanta, and they played Auburn extremely close, down to the wire, down to the last play, last series. So I still give Washington a level of credit for that loss, as I have Michigan, even though they just snuck into my top. They're not quite in my top 25, but considered. Texas A&M, same thing. If Clemson would have gone into Kyle Field and blown them off the map, then I would not have Texas A&M in my top 25. They lost, and they would have gotten blown out and humiliated, but they stood toe-to-toe with Clemson, outplayed them in the second half, lost the game, but still, I give them a level of credit for playing Clemson that tough. You do need to make some assumptions. I had somebody question in the comments section saying, well, by putting this team here, you're assuming that they're good and they're good. Well, everybody's only played 2 games and some teams only 1 game, but just about everybody's played 2 games. So there have to be some assumptions made. Alabama beat Louisville, neutral site. They beat Arkansas State. So we have to make assumptions about Alabama, even Alabama. There are some assumptions made. We don't know that Louisville's any good. They could go 4-8 this year. So you have to make some level of assumptions, and those should decrease as the season goes on. So I love people that jump on me for my top 25 and note that Stanford's not the best team in the country. You've got them ranked number 1. You're a joke. You're an idiot. Okay, I didn't say that Stanford was the best team in the country. I said that right now, through 2 weeks, they have the best resume. There's nobody else, in my opinion, out there that has played 2 more difficult games and played them well. 31-10, 17-3 over USC. San Diego State, USC are the 2 wins for Stanford. I've rated those as the 2 best wins based on the opponents and the performance on the field, the quality of win. Okay. Ohio State's playing TCU, for example, this week. That's going to tell us a lot. There are going to be a ton of games that are going to tell us a lot. This unfolds week to week. I've got Maryland in the top 10 right now at what, number 9 or 8. I don't believe that Maryland is the 8th best team in the country. They beat Texas, and then they followed up with Bowling Green, which is not a substantial win, but they did do against Bowling Green what you would expect a top 25 team to do. They trucked them 45-14. A typical Maryland team goes up against Bowling Green and they win, 31-20. But they took care of them. They housed them and did what you would expect. Now, Maryland's most likely going to jump into Big Ten East play and start losing games, and I'll kick them right out of the top 25. But for right now, they beat Texas and they whipped Bowling Green. So I've got them in the top 10. Hopefully you follow that logic. I'm not telling you who I think are the 25 best teams in the nation. I am rating them based on their performance through 2 weeks. That's what it is. All right, I'll stick around for a few more minutes. It is 7:01, so I got to go very quickly. 860-325-3687 if anybody else has anything else to say. Otherwise, we will see you back here at 9:45 Eastern Time, Arizona State Talk, then followed by Alabama Talk with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. And just check out the video that I just posted maybe 45 minutes ago. So it was between the Utah Talk and the LSU Talk that I took time to throw out another video at you, giving you the full lineup for the week to date. We've got Florida State on there, Ohio State, Nebraska, LSU, of course, that we just finished, Arizona State, Alabama, all sorts of good teams to talk about coming up this week. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like the videos, comment, and subscribe. And also share the videos if you come across a good video that you're into and you know a lot of fans of that particular team. Hey, share the video. That would be great as well. Appreciate the support. Yeah, you guys have a great night. And I will see you back here on Tuesday night